These are my top picks for the most underrated weapons in Dark Souls 3. Agree, disagree, but I think that these are some weapons that just need a little bit more love. And obviously, this list is very subjective, so drop your favorite underrated weapons in the comments and just explain why you think they're underrated. In the meantime, I want to get into the criteria for what I consider an underrated weapon. So in order to call these weapons underrated, I tried looking at all of their positives and negatives, then looked at their public opinion on them. Now, obviously, I am not great about public opinion hunting, so this might be a little skewed or wrong. And in any case, if a weapon has some really good or unique benefits and a negative or neutral public opinion, I'll consider it underrated, at least for the purposes of this video. Also, just because it's on this list does not mean that it is good, just underrated. So without further yapping, let's get into the list. And the first underrated weapon is Arnie's Straight Sword. So I am sorry, but what the heck is this weapon and who made it? I am tired of hearing the hate for this thing and why it got number 1 on my Straight Sword list. Let this thing cook. This thing gets blessed style regen, which isn't much, but it is a decent benefit. It also has anti-reanimation properties, which is particularly nice in Carthus when you want to kill skeletons permanently rather than having them come back to eat you later. This is also one of the very few weapons that actually mainly scales with luck instead of dexterity, strength, faith, or intelligence, meaning that for luck builders, this is a really good option, especially because, well, it's not a status weapon. So if you're a luck builder who doesn't want to do another status playthrough, this is actually a really good option. Not to mention, the reason why it's so good is because it gets incredible damage. I don't know the exact numbers, but it is something astronomically good on a luck build. So I personally believe that this weapon is very underrated. Probably because most people don't know that it scales with luck. And also, people just don't use luck builds most of the time because status sucks, which means that this weapon is not likely to be used. It's underrated, and genuinely, I think you should use it. Number 2, the second weapon on this list, is Arstor's Spear. So the Hollow Slayer Greatsword is the much more well-known drop from this boss, and it's clear why. That thing has a really cool moveset, anti-hollow properties, and decent damage. I mean, what's not to like? My issue with all of that is the simple fact that everybody saw the sword and got turned on or something, leaving that hidden gem just completely in the dust. It may not be the Thunderbolt of Zeus or anything, but by Morn, it is a decent spear. No Estus runs have never had it so easy, unless you count the butchering knife. Literally, this thing actually, is impressive. Give this, pair this with the butcher's knife, and you actually have a no Estus build that can bring you to endgame. This thing also has a lot more benefits than just what I mentioned. First things first, it does poison buildup. Now, I dunk on poison a lot, but poison, no, never mind it. Poison is still completely useless, but it is a benefit, and it is there. So, I guess that's something? I don't know. We're moving on from that because the next stuff is actually useful. This thing gets 30 HP on kill, and that is a paltry amount, especially late game. However, it can get better. It stacks with the Ring of Evil Eye all the way up to +3, which can get you a decent bit of HP whenever you kill an enemy. And it's not show-stopping, but it is definitely better than just, no HP on kill, I guess. And it can actually really mean that for certain areas that have a lot of very small enemies and are pretty long, you don't have to use as much Estus because you're just getting your HP back. This thing also has good damage, surprisingly, but it also has range because, it's a spear, meaning that for range builds, this is a pretty great option. And on the topic of it being a spear, it can even shield poke and does thrusting damage. So, that's all great. And of course, you can't mention this thing without mentioning the design. The design is really cool. Genuinely, I'm pretty miffed that this weapon is considered bad, even if it has poison buildup. Number 3, the third on this list, is the Painting Guardian's Curved Sword. So I really want to know who designed the visuals for this weapon. I need their address, because this is just inexcusable. Now, it does have one bad point, and I just want to get it out of the way real quick because it really doesn't matter too much. But this is not a long curved sword. In fact, this thing is very short. It's almost like a dagger, a little bit bigger, but it still feels like a dagger sometimes. Now, just because it is short doesn't excuse the fact that I never heard about how powerful this thing is, because the skill is truly something oppressive. This skill is insane for status and has super fast chaining attacks. But beyond the skill, which builds up bleed and other, statuses at an incredible rate, plus dealing decent damage, we need to look at the weapon, because the weapon itself is a whole different brand of radioactive material. First things first, this thing has innate bleed, meaning, yeah, your skill gonna be even nuttier. But beyond that, it can also be infused, which means, yes, more bleed buildup, or if you're crazy, you can also do poison, or if you're even crazier, just infuse it with, something else that makes it do incredible damage. And, obviously, base damage can only be one half of the pie. So what about the other half? What about the scalings? Well, this thing gets S and A scaling infusions across the board. That is nuts. Just nuts. I genuinely cannot believe that this thing is in the game and nobody mentions it. That is illegal for how strong this thing is. My fourth underrated weapon is the Demon Scar. Now, I will admit, I have seen a lot of support for this. I'm looking at you, my commenters. But I still do think that this is relatively underrated by the larger community. I haven't seen anybody necessarily singing its praises as much as I have seen you guys sing its praises. So I want to bring it a little bit more to light for people who just don't really know much about this thing. So, this thing truly is a present of seemingly crazy random benefits. And I genuinely cannot begin to describe what the heck this weapon is as a whole, just because it is a mess of things. So, first things first, this is very unique, a very unique weapon, because this is actually the only pyromancy weapon catalyst hybrid in the entire game. And it is actually really good for pyromancers, because everything about this weapon is built for pyromancers. And probably the biggest example of this is the weight. This thing only has a 0.5 weight, which is really good because it means you don't have to invest in vitality. And as a pyromancer, you're already having to double dip into both intelligence and faith, meaning that having to dip in other stats that aren't your, core essential stats does kind of suck. I mean, think about this. You spend a couple, let's just say you're level 100, right? You're spending all your levels on getting your intelligence, faith, vigor, and attunement, maybe even endurance. Let's throw endurance in there. All of that, yeah, you upgrade it all. And then you realize, wait, I can't use this super awesome weapon because I don't have the vitality. But then you're like, well, I still am not even close to being as healthy as I want to be going into these other areas. And so you have to sacrifice by removing armor pieces or choosing different items. In all honesty, having a very low weight for a pyromancer is so nice, and this weapon does it very well. Number 5 is Dark Drift. I actually had this as my number 1 katana at one point. Now, it did not deserve that spot in the slightest, but with the heavens as my witness, it does not deserve the reputation that it currently has. This thing, primarily, has a weird niche of having shield pierce, which is completely unique for katanas, by the way, but that shield pierce is still niche. That being said, it is a great niche to have. I mean, it doesn't hurt anybody. And probably the more interesting thing is the fact that the skill gives 100% shield pierce. And it even has a very good forward attack to close distance. That means this is a really good weapon against knights. Even if it doesn't have any dark damage, which genuinely kind of sucks. And that's my main problem with it. Now, of course, all that being said, this is a katana with innate bleed, and it still does pure damage, like pure physical damage, so no split damages, which means it won't fall off as bad in New Game and New Game Plus. But it also is actually semi-transparent, which I guess can be used in PvP to trip up your opponent. I still wouldn't use it that much, it doesn't seem super useful, but for those of you who really want something that is good against shield pokers, I guess, like, this is a decent option. Now, to be fair, those are some whack benefits, making this thing really weird, but I genuinely think that this needs a lot of points for those, especially since it is a katana, which we all know are just so good. Except for Bloodlust, that one still sucks. At number 6, I have the War Pick. Thrusting damage on a hammer is unique enough, but this thing just said, F that, I'm a ball. This thing gets the highest based innate damage at +0 and still competes with other options at +10 in the hammer category. Which, mind you, not a great category. Well, for damage, that is. But for, actually hitting your opponent and stunning them, hit stun, the hammer category is one of the best. And having extra damage on top of that is pretty dang nice. And, of course, you can't talk about damage without talking about scalings. We're talking A scalings in infusions, which is pretty good, not gonna lie. That's a pretty respectable scaling letter. However, the other niche of this weapon is the fact that it actually has shield pierce, which is apparently really dang high for just no dang reason. We're talking like 40%, where most other shield circumvention weapons are usually around 20 to 10%, and that's just off the top of my head. But that is really high, meaning that this thing is an excellent anti-shield weapon, and, that can be decent. As I said, it's not perfect all the time, but against knights, that's pretty good. And it's thrusting damage, which, as I said in my ranking every damage type video, that's good. So, this weapon might not be the most overrated I've ever seen, but I definitely think it deserves some attention for its power, at least against shields. Now, my 7th one is one that I bashed a lot in a previous video, and that's the Caestus. I'm never going to like the rose, guys. Just please give it up. So, talking about the Caestus, fist weapons usually suck, but some are underrated, and this is probably one of the best points of that. This shows why fist weapons are underrated. Mostly. It's not great for damage, but for everything else, it actually is really competent. The real thing about fists is the fact that they have incredible attack speed with really low range and damage. So, with that being said, with incredible attack speed, you can do some crazy things. I'm thinking like use Pontiff Rings to gain more HP and gain incredibly high attack boosts with one combo, which is kind of nutty. Now, incredible attack speed aside, this weapon is pretty great because it's actually not only the only infusible fist weapon with actually great infusions, but it actually is the lightest infusible weapon in the entire game. This also means that it does a lot more damage than other fist weapons on the majority of builds, because obviously you can infuse it. It can do a lot of different things. And obviously you have double hits, which means, you can use those rings. But the real thing that irks me is the fact that this thing gets S infusions in some stats. Like, what? This thing, what are these? Like, leather oven mitts get S infusions? That's just nuts. So, Yeah, there are a lot of benefits for this weapon, and even the downsides aren't all too bad if you know how to use these right. And that's literally, like, the main downside is just the low range, and I guess damage, but that's it. You can buff damage too, so that doesn't matter. I think it's underrated, personally. And my 8th underrated weapon is the follower javelin. A bow without a bow, scaling of my dreams with no downsides, a plain look that makes it fit for my Roman warrior cosplay. Genuine masterclass of a weapon we got here, guys. This thing has skill ranged attacks that actually do really good damage. If you want, like, you know, a good throwing skill, a good ranged skill, most of them are magic. This one is not, because it's all physical damage. Now, when I say that, you obviously are like, that probably means it has bad damage. Just look at the crow quills. That thing has awful damage, getting up to like 100 if every single needle hits at literally right in front of you. This thing says, no, I'm actually going to have range and damage. So the ranged attacks go a pretty decent ways, at least from my testing, before having extreme damage fall-offs. And the real issue that I have with this entire weapon is the fact that the scalings and infusions are really good. Yeah, that's an issue, because that means you are getting a lot of damage on a weapon that you can throw. Why would I use anything else? This thing is also a pretty early pickup from a DLC that you can access in like early mid-game or late early game, not quite sure, just around that area. Pretty great pickup. And it is a really good option for a range build who doesn't want to use a bow, because let's be real, bows are not great. Now, I also chose this because it's really, really fun. This and the crow quills are two weapons that I just cannot stop loving, whether it's because they're range or whatnot. But the crow quills are immaculately designed, and I think that means a lot of people see them and say, wow, this is incredible. Unfortunately, this is kind of overshadowed by that, and yeah, it's really just here to demonstrate that the Smith script weapons in the Elden Ring DLC could have been better. My 9th weapon is the Lucerne. This is the people's weapon. The Lucerne is a halberd, meaning it's underrated no matter what, but even more so because you really want to use that Black Knight glaive and Gundir's halberd, obviously. So get ready, I'm going to tell you why this forgotten child of Satan needs attention more than the average emo teenager. This thing has 2 damage types, strike and thrust. If you watched the ranking every damage type video, you would know that those are the best physical damage types for so many reasons, but they also just happen to be really good. This thing also has like a really good moveset with vertical attacks and horizontal sweeps, meaning that if you know how to use it really well, you can use it in any situation and be just fine. Super versatile. And if you're not a big fan of just plain physical damage, great, you have infusions. It even gets A's, so screw you, that's great, especially for a halberd. It also has very low requirements and a very early pickup. Even compared to the other halberds, I think this thing actually has the lowest requirements, and I think it's the second earliest pickup, I want to say. I'm not quite sure, but I think it's the second earliest pickup. But above all that, it has excellent base damage, which genuinely I was shocked about. Honestly, I love this weapon to death, simply because it is really fun to hit people with hammers. Tell me I'm wrong. And my final underrated weapon is Ricard's rapier. Say whatever you want, but that skill is something status builds see in their wet dreams, and I see in my nightmares. We're talking A and S scalings in infusions, with the bleed infusion getting 39 bleed buildup, which the skill boosts because it's rapid thrusting. The skill, like, is the primary point and the primary selling point of this entire weapon, because it can just shred anything and everything. But rapiers are pretty underrated, especially because the crow quills exist. The only rapier that absolutely makes me wet my freaking pants in a different way than normal. So, seeing this, saying, yeah, the crow quills are great. Yeah, it is, but give some love to this guy, because it deserves a lot of love, too. This is the best rapier with the stock. Well, all the other ones are pretty trash, but even so, really great. This thing is just really great. We're talking multi-attacks for status, shield wear and tear, and rings. Yeah, you can just do ring stuff, plus thrusting damage. I mean, seriously, what more could you want? There is a lot more you could say, but there's also a lot more that you just don't have to say. Overall, this weapon is really strong. I am really sad that people don't talk about it more because crow quills exist, but that really just means it's underrated and I get to put it in a video again, so yippee! Alright, so I didn't write an outro for this video, which I normally do, but this is my first video that I'm recording in my dorm room, so sorry if the audio sounds a little finicky, or if there's noises in the background. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and I also just want to thank everybody for being incredibly supportive while I had to move here, and yeah, also sorry for not keeping my schedule to one per week. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to change back until one of my breaks, because the school is going to be a demon this year. So thank you all so much for sticking around and watching the video up until this point. Thank you everybody who has been super supportive, and thank you all for being super kind. And yeah, I mean, I really appreciate all you guys. I'm gonna try to not get burnout. As much as I already am feeling exhausted, I'm gonna try my best. So yeah, as always, thank you for watching up to this point, and once again, as always, happy hunting.